Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 108 of Kouryer Podcast. Our today's guest is Mr. Andrius Matijosius. He's a 2D character designer with 10 plus years of experience in the industry and also including experience with AAA companies from Butkaučizna, Lithuania. Now, with that quick introduction out of the way, give us a little introduction on how you got into visual arts and design.
Thanks for having me, first off. and so, how I got into visual arts? I
Yeah,
think,
exactly.
yeah, I've been pretty single tracked my whole life. So, one of my very first memories was like of me drawing like my versions of Transformers as a kid. So, I think I was primed since like age 4 or something already to be into like drawing characters. And yeah, so that kind of never went away. Kept drawing. I think in high school, or at around age 15, was the first time I realized that this could be a job for me. So my first like goal like that in art was actually to become an animator because I was super into Naruto at the time. But eventually, like I understood that maybe that's like a little too intense. And I met a few people online that were the first guys that actually offered me a job when I was 17. And that was with video games, like drawing some backgrounds for like a small local project. And they pretty much enlightened me about the whole thing, about the industry, about there's such a thing as a concept artist, character designers. They showed me like the old school videos of Massive Black doing the workshops and stuff like that. And then I think that was pretty set in stone by that time, where I want to go, what I want to do.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting how everyone goes through the different paths that everyone takes to get to that enlightenment moment for them, eureka moment to, aha, this could be a job. This is actually a thing, And I think let me actually explain something to your listeners of the podcast. I mean, it might kind of help some people to gain some clarity on this whole industry on different jobs. Basically, this is how I look at it. All right. Imagine, I'm just going to give an example of, for example, a video game project. All right. So you have your art directors, you have your level designers, you have your 3D modelers, like all the designers and stuff aside. First, you need the world builders and a story and a plot, which writers and environment artists do that, the concept artists and all of that. And the products that concept artists basically make, they're references for the other sections of the team that is working on a game, which is usually the level builders, the 3D modelers, and all stuff like that. They make all this stuff, the props, the guns, everything, the rigs, the animation, all that stuff based from concept art. So then from that point, the designers come oversee how the stuff works and edit that. Then after that, they put it all together in the levels and the cutscenes, that the cutscenes need animators and the animators need keyframes and all of that. So there's so many things. So if we just make it, maybe I should make an infographic about this. That might be a good idea.
I think there's so much niche, like very,
Yeah.
very tight technical jobs that I don't even know are a thing. But yeah, a lot of things need to be done in the process. It's a very huge machine.
Yeah, but when you kind of like put it in like a piece of paper or in your perspective and you look at it from a little bit behind, you can get some clarity on, all right, maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I want to do keyframes for animations for projects. Maybe I want to go work for Riot in keyframes for their like new champions and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
There's so much room in this industry, and both fortunately and unfortunately, it's just not in like this kind of entertainment industry is really booming, but it's not really easily, the jobs aren't easily available that much all around the world. I mean, you could do some freelance work, but in the end, like if you finally find out the niche that you want to work in and you just laser focus on it, after a couple of years you can easily get a job anywhere in the world, so yeah, I mean, that definitely helps, if that's the thing you want to go. And I actually recently discovered that the thing that I really genuinely love isn't necessarily as much as it surprised me myself, that the thing that I'm most talented at and I really enjoy doing is illustration, and especially illustrations for fashion and in general graphic design. Like that's the stuff that I really like. Although I love concept art and I still want to learn it, like that's something, a hobby that I genuinely enjoy, and I think it would enrich my life. if I learned that, and I would feel satisfied by that. But yeah, it's really important to both have the realism aspect of it and also the technical, job aspect of it as well, and put them all together like in a Venn diagram. Then you can see, all right, what should I do? I think even Chris, I don't know if, do you know Christo? He's a famous YouTuber and a graphic designer.
No, probably don't.
Oh, he's a super famous guy, graphic designer. His studio and brand's called Future without an
Oh
E
yeah,
in
yeah,
yet.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that guy.
Probably didn't know his name, but I've watched a few videos for sure.
Yeah, and he's such a genius. Honestly, his videos are so super helpful. And one of the things he also even a video he made, and I also recommend everyone to check it out if they're kind of interested in that. Is he explained the concept? I think a Japanese concept called ikigai,
Hmm.
Ikegai, in a video, which basically means looking at your job prospects with four different lenses at the same time. Like he even drew for one diagrams, the things you love, the things you're good at, and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into it too much because I don't remember
Basically,
it
finding
properly.
the overlap of your passion, what you're good at, what makes money, and something that connects all those things and gives you maybe purpose in life or something.
Yes, yeah, something like that. I think. Yeah, and but I genuinely think like the more you research about the different job opportunities that is out there, for you, the different specialties that are out there, maybe you it helps you more to finally find that position that you genuinely will shine in and you love. Maybe some people just enjoy the hell out of like animating walking cycles in animations. Maybe literally someone just wants to just zoom in their whole life on animating jump animations.
Yeah,
You know how much,
there's I think almost no limits to how niche you can aim at.
because
Because
there's so much room right now for even improvement and exploration in this field, and not just in terms of like jobs, but in terms of art as well. There's some we haven't I honestly believe we haven't even scratched the surface, honestly. And if you can, and you kind of start to see these patterns and stuff once you actually start to research a lot. And it's such a beautiful thing. I highly recommend everyone to check out the stuff we just talked about right now. It's kind of interesting. And actually, the next thing I want to talk about is, were you originally studying art and design, or you were pursuing another career path? I mean, you already mentioned that when you were 15, 16, you kind of already knew that you wanted, okay, this could be a job.
yeah,
But even during those times, were there any doubts, or were you talking with your family or friends? They can't. You had this kind of suspicions that, all right, maybe I should go to through another route that makes money and is stable, and I have this on the side. I mean, that's.
I
I
had
mean,
a dip. Yeah,
oh, sorry, go on.
yeah, I had a dip where I had some doubts, but since as I said, like I was drawing from childhood, and I started going to art school very early. So at fifth grade, I was 12, and my mom forced me basically to go to art school. It wasn't really my wish, but now I'm thankful. But so then it was just something I did. I didn't really think of the future too deeply, um, and it was just something I did, right? And the school was kind of a bit of a in between. It wasn't like an art school like that you have maybe in the States or something. It was like a regular school with a strengthened art, like maybe extra art classes. It was called a gymnasium, but typically gymnasiums would only take people in from eighth grade, and so they started taking kids at age 12. So they prepared us early and then specialized at the last 2 years of school. Um, and I finished school. I already knew I wanted to go into. I figured out I want to go into video game design, character design, probably more specifically. It didn't have to be video games. But then there was one year where I did not apply to any higher education. I didn't have a plan, and I think it was 2008, and it was also the economic crisis, the financial dip, and so my parents couldn't really support me going to like a specialized game design school or something like that. So I ended up just tagging along with my friends, going to spend 1 year in art academy in with sculpture, basically. That's was what I specialized in school. And the thing I didn't realize back then, it wasn't really like a sculpture in the traditional sense, like doing things out of clay or stone or whatever, like the classic. But it was modern art, a contemporary art, and it was very postmodern. And basically, all that I was building up with my skills, like working on my, by myself, like trying to get better at it, it didn't matter. Basically, it was all about the idea, how you present it, like how novel it is, and that kind of shook me up. And back then, I resonated with some of the ideas, and that's why it kind of, any certainty I had before that was shaken up. Basically, I started asking, what's the purpose? Is this even fucking, you know, interesting to me at that point? And then I had a bit of a dip. I started questioning it. Is art that I want to do? For a brief moment, I even considered like maybe starting a electrician apprenticeship or something like that. Something very simple that would be like basic. There's no questions if it's like necessary or useful. Like it would be, I would feel fulfilled basically. But then it took me a few years to realize that, I get joy from it, and if I can make others have joy from it, then it's worth it anyway. So a year after that art academy, I got my first job in the industry, in the video game industry.
And speaking of your first job, I mean, that's actually kind of nice that you ended your answer on that, because kind of one of the questions I want to ask is, what was the first art job paycheck you ever got, and what was it for, and how did you feel at the time? Because that's something like a milestone for every artist. That's kind of like quite fascinating for them.
Yeah. So now that I mentioned it was my first job in the industry, that wasn't my first paycheck though. When I talked before about the people I met that introduced me to concept art when I was 17, that was actually the first paycheck. So they invited me to work on this small video game project. It was like an educational, basically video game for schools to learn pronunciation and something like that. And it was like a small team of they were all friends basically. There were a few programmers, one artist that was also an animator, and they got me to do like the background drawings for the game. It was like a 2D game. And yeah, that was the first job. It was pretty DIY basically. It was renting like a small space, my first experience. But then I got to meet people that knew something about what it is, how it works, and showed me basically their inspirations and whatnot, and that really brought me in. And that was a life changing moment for me. And as a big fat bonus, I also got paid. So that was maybe like 2 months in the summertime that this took place, and actually was pretty good paycheck as well. And if I already was kind of pretty sure that I wanted to do character design or go into that direction, then that sealed it in for me basically. Then my parents also saw that, okay, this is actually, you're not even out of school and you already can make money with it, then go ahead. Okay. So it felt pretty great.
Yeah, that must have been felt awesome at the time. And that's actually kind of interesting that one of the main things that usually, like, convinces your, not just parents but your friends as well, your close friends, that hey, I have a future in this, is when they see you, I don't know, make some money or see some success. Maybe you enter a tournament. Like, I'm talking about, if it's, I'm not just talking about art stuff, like anything, any endeavor that anyone enters in, and they suddenly start believing it, which is nice. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but um, it's something that I think a lot of us have in the beginning, have still have this pressure on ourselves in the beginning, that all right, I need to somehow, even if we're the type of people that were like, all right, I don't care what anyone thinks, I'm just gonna follow my dream there, but there's still this subtle pressure on us to kind of make it, in that sense, to
Yeah.
kind of prove to our, people close to us that hey, there's a future in this. And I think it's kind of sad. I wish just people would just not judge the success of an endeavor based on, like, necessarily how much money it would make, or
I
how.
think it's mostly people just
Of course
thinking about,
they, yeah, exactly, no, I get that,
because
but
since this doesn't overlap with their life at all, this is some kind of mystical, profession or whatnot. Like, a lot of people have no idea. Even, now that it's been over 10 years I've been doing it, I don't think my relatives really understand what it is that I do, anyway. So, but I'm fine. I survived. I'm doing okay. So they don't bother, like, questioning it anymore.
but do they usually ask you, could you draw my face, this question?
There was a lot of that earlier. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, when someone's a relative's birthday comes along, and then they ask me, "Oh, could you do a portrait?" Stuff like that, and I would sometimes, yeah, but yeah.
No, I mean, it's kind of interesting that, like, even me and my one of my architecture teachers were, like, sitting in front of a huge mosque in Istanbul, in Turkey, and while we were sketching the building, people would come up to us and ask us to do their portraits, and I was like, dude, we're doing buildings. How does that, like, how, what kind of thought process you go through that you think, all right, this guy can draw my portrait? Oh, he draws buildings. He must draw anything. He's a drawer, whatever. I don't know. It's just, even sometimes graphic designers get that question, which is kind of baffling to me. Like, hey, dude, could you make my draw my face? Like, why?
It's all this, mixture for them of, like, a creative guy basically can draw, write music, make videos, everything. So a lot
Yeah,
of, like, the times, even sometimes clients, they wouldn't know, like, what's the difference between, a character designer, environment artist, prop designer, or 3D artist. So they think, you can probably do all of it. Like, I still get sometimes people that expect, like, something that there's not a hint of it in your portfolio, but they think you can do
interesting.
it. Well, I'm from Eastern Europe. It's like, maybe this doesn't happen to me as much anymore. Like, my good friend is, like, working with a lot of Lithuanian clients, and there's a lot of that going on. It's just
Yeah.
a lack of experience, like a young, very green industry still developing.
Oh, yeah, I can totally see that. And the next question is, I mean, of course, we talked a bit about your, like, what you do, but we want to go a little bit deeper. What is your main branch of design that you're focusing on? And tell us about your experience from the start of it until now. I mean, of course, I already mentioned in the introduction that you do, you're a 2D character designer, but I want to hear it from you now. Like, explain us a bit.
So yeah, I'm very fairly narrowly focused, I think, with yeah, character design. I don't do much of either illustration, or I tend to hesitate with those. It's difficult for me. So it is mostly character design. It is mostly for video games, and I think it is mostly what people ask me to do is on the more, like, my portfolio is kind of split in half. So I like stylized cartoony stuff. That's like what I personally am drawn to, and then there's the side where I try to do a little bit more stylized realism, and I think that's just generally more popular, and that's what most of my clients would want me to do as well. So it tends to be that, and not sure what else would you want me to
From
elaborate
the,
on.
like, here's the thing. Like, since when did you realize that you want to become a character designer first? From beginning, or like, what kind of happened? Like, what was the story behind it?
Uh, yeah, so that was after my experience with the first job with those guys that showed me, like, concept art and character design. Then I realized that, okay, that I don't want to be an animator. I want to do character designs. It's a little quicker turnaround, and I think, like, the stuff that got me excited the most was, like, cool characters mostly. So that's basically when I started pushing towards it, like practicing. And I was still in school, so I had, plenty of free time, and I put in the work early, I suppose, which helped me out later because I already had some stuff online, and then the transition to actually working and getting jobs wasn't so hard. So I was fairly eager to actually share my work, because at the time as well, like it's like 2008 in Lithuania, Eastern Europe. Digital art at that time wasn't that popular. Like in the whole country, there was probably, you can, maybe 20 digital artists, and they all almost knew each other. Like maybe more, but it's a very small community. So it was kind of nice to kind of put it online and share and see what others are doing. But that was like on the local scale, and then eventually I found like concept art org, and later on ArtStation. So yeah, that kind of pretty naturally kind of flowed into work, basically.
All right. And actually, mentioning your portfolio on ArtStation, which of course I'm going to link it in the captions as well for anyone who's interested to see what we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. It's kind of split into two kind of different styles. There's like in the beginnings, there was more like kind of realistic, grim type of vibe. Then it turned into some cartoony stuff, like vibrant, live colors,
Yeah,
and
I was very undecided. Like, you know how it is. Like,
yeah,
watching stuff online, and everything looks awesome, and you want to try everything as well. Like, oh, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do that. So it's a long, long journey of trying to find myself. I think it's only in the last couple of years where I feel I found something I'm comfortable with and I'm excited to do. So I'm trying to settle. Like, I'm trying actually to push towards like the more stylized stuff these days. I hope to get more client offers to do stuff like that, rather. Yeah.
yeah. And about some of the series of characters you've done, like they have this WWO on them. Like, what is that about?
It's just like a small personal project. It's World War Z, basically. So at the time, I think, yeah, I was working for a few years in studio Six More Vodka, and that was like a big good, you know, influence on me. And I think we had a project that needed some First World War character designs, and I was never like a history geek or anything. I didn't like look into World War II like most kids in school, that are obsessed with tanks or whatnot. But for me, that wasn't the case. And back then, when I had to do the job, I was started looking into the references, like for photographs from the period. I just got enchanted. Basically, I was so taken by it, and especially looking into some early experimental armors from the period, it just really scratched an itch for me. Basically, it was some stuff that I never knew existed, and I just got obsessed and tried to explore it a little bit. So that just started with like one design, and I added another one and another one, and it kind of became like a series of characters. It's not like something that has a story or anything like that. It's more me exploring an aesthetic, like, or just also a style. Uh, and yeah, like in design and whatnot, like I'm usually I would say I'm driven by the concept, and basically uh, trying to find some kind of a twist that scratches an itch for me. Like it's something that makes it worth like realization, right? I'm trying to also become technically proficient, but that usually takes like a backseat to the idea. I usually don't start working until I have something that I figured out, like that's an idea in my head that I want out on paper. Then I really sit down to work.
All right, actually, Six More Vodka. I think that's the same kind of studio that also worked on Legends of Runeterra, right?
Yes, but I worked before that with them. I was there very early, I think, right when they started. So I was there 2011 to 2013, maybe something like that.
Oh, so in the early days, I think, if I'm not
Very early
mistaken.
days. I think then we did have like a small job for Riot. to do some designs, but it wasn't like Legends of Runeterra back then or anything like that. It was a few character designs, but at that time the studio mostly focused on character designs for either AAA titles or mobile games. But it was mostly a lot of different clients. It wasn't like exclusively Riot back then.
That's interesting. And actually, are you excited about the new project that Riot's been working on, and they're about to release it, like estimatedly on 2025 or six? There's basically gonna make a kind of World of Warcraft type game, but in the set in the universe of Runeterra. By the way, do you play League of Legends or Riot games?
No.
You've done a great
Unfortunately,
thing. Your mental health is safe. Good.
it's not my thing at all. Like, if I play video games, I prefer single player games, RPGs. So, right, you know, artistically, like technically, it's amazing. It's fantastic. I love the artists that work for it. But like, as the whole thing, it's for me, it's not my cup of tea, so to speak. Like,
Yeah, I
not
can
really fond
totally
of
understand. Yeah.
the products. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean those games. I mean, honestly, like work well if you have a group of friends that you can constantly play with. But if you want to
Yes.
play it solo, that's kind of torture, honestly. Yeah, I mean, I
Exactly. The learning curve is pretty
mm,
harsh, and if you jump in, of course you're like ranked and stuff. You start with people that are also starting out, but I think like I just was never that competitive with games, and when other people are taking it like much more seriously than you, it's just kind of not so fun for me. So yeah.
yeah, that's actually such a good point. Yeah, that competitiveness. I mean, I'm not I enjoy one of the reasons I enjoy these online games is because of the competitiveness of it. Like I'm not a toxic person, like, but I just enjoy like some sort of competition. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
also at the same time, I also enjoy like single player, calm, chill experiences. Like yeah, when I was a kid, I used to play a lot of RPG games as well. Like Fallout New Vegas was one of my favorite games ever. And yeah, then Skyrim. Yeah, I love those games. They were amazing, honestly.
Yeah, for me, like it's not like I'm not that competitive. I would love to be competitive, and I do. If I do play video games with someone, it's usually someone I know, or like we're like sitting on the same couch playing, either Mortal Kombat or something like that. Then yeah, I do get competitive. But when you go online, it's just like a step above, and I've never put in the hours to actually be good enough to justify like that. It's just yeah, as you said, torture for me. Like and just get your ass beat real quick.
Yeah, and speaking of some of the artists and tried games and all of that, um, I like another question that just popped into my mind that I need to ask you, which is who are your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most?
Yeah, I knew this question is coming as well. But I think, yeah, I tried to think about it, and I think I can kind of boil it down to like three categories. And maybe I would say also like inspired and influenced, right? So something that did leave a mark on my work as well. So like the three categories would be like obviously like childhood, when something hits you at the most impressionable age. So for me, that was like some of the earliest stuff I've watched. I remember like my very first memories is like watching Astro Boy, Speed Racer, Conan the Adventurer. It's like shows like that. Then when I was a little bit older, at age 12, I think I found Dragon Ball. So that was huge. That was like haunted me for many years, like and motivated me to draw more. So obviously, Akira Toriyama was a big deal for me. Then after that, the second like big punch for me was Naruto, so Masashi Kishimoto. That's to this day, like it hit me at such an impressionable age. Like I'm very serious about Naruto. Like, I love the character designs. I love the aesthetic. I like that it's anime, but it's not exactly like all the other anime. He has like his own style to it. So to this day, it's I think it's a big deal for me. Um, then phase two, like after childhood, I think the biggest influence and inspiration was when I did start working at Six More Vodka. So that's basically I from my friends I found out about concept art. I found out about Massive Black, and those group of people were like the first like character designers I ever saw, and they obviously left like a massive imprint on me. That's like how it opened the whole thing for me, right? What I thought character design should be, and all of that. So and eventually, I got to work for Marko Djurdjevic. So obviously, he's like one of the names that I just cannot not mention here. He left a massive mark on my life, and with the influence and teaching me. Like I was 21 when I started working there, basically fresh out of just on my feet. Just started living independently, and so not only did he teach me a lot about art, but just life and industry and everything. And another person during those years at Six More Vodka was Ville Kinnunen. So he was like, if Marco was, Big Daddy, so Ville was Big Brother for me. Like he was the senior artist, and I related a lot to his taste in design, the way he worked. So I picked so many things from him that I use to this day, like in terms of my drawing process and just design sensibilities, all of that. So still, I think if he looks at my work, I think he can tell when I'm ripping him off. Like so still happens. And then right now is like a whole bunch of artists that I follow. It's just like so much good art out there that is too much to name. Like I try to make a folder called like goals that have artists that do stuff that I relate to or would like to incorporate into my art, but that doesn't mean it's influenced it yet. It's like I'm working towards it, right? So yeah, there's I don't know. I can name a few names. I have the pictures opened that
Yeah, sure. Go ahead if you want.
So yeah, like Adrian Smith, like obviously a big one, and again, like he's one of the artists that I found out through Ville. So that's like how he influenced me a lot. Like Warhammer 40K as well. I found out through him. Like I didn't know about it. I wasn't into it, and then after he told me about it, like it also kind of flipped it around for me. So there's Ate Gailan is like definitely does a lot of things that I want to incorporate into my work with just the way he paints or how the way he shows backgrounds and scenes and all that like slice of life kind of things. Il Kwang Kim as a character designer is pretty big. Like he works on a lot of animation on Netflix at the moment. Afu-chan also like I just absolutely love character designs from I don't even know if it's a he or a she or a they. It's like it's just a nickname, but I know that their pictures like inspired me for many years. Like I look at it as like perfect designs. Stepan Alexeyev is pretty great as well, like illustrations. Uh, there's a lot like so this is something I want to incorporate more as I progress, because at the moment I am a character designer, but I'm trying to move more towards like as well world building and maybe illustration, something I want to do. It's very difficult for me to do backgrounds as it is now, but every now and then I keep trying, I fail, but it's something I want to do, since the one of the biggest influences are like shows like Dragon Ball, Naruto. So my big end goal in life would be to make something that's like a product like that, like a world on its own, like some so that's where maybe in 30 years, so I'd like to have that done.
Yeah, sure. That sounds awesome. And actually, something interesting. While we were talking about the like your favorite artists and stuff like that, every time like on podcasts, guests are talking, I take notes of the things they're talking and I try to search it on another tab to so bring up another topic. to enrich the whole conversation. And here's an interesting thing: I was browsing through the art station of Six More Vodka, and I just opened up a random environment sketch, like it's called Com City, and I looked down to see who are the artists. And
Okay.
the first one was Marko Djordjevic. I'm sorry
Marko
if I
Djurdjevic, yeah.
wait. Could you spell that again?
Marko Djurdjevic.
Georgievich. Oh, Georgievich. Yeah, and the other one was Andrius Matijosius. Yes, and I was like, wait, who is that? And I realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm just talking to him right now. I'm honestly not joking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was
There are a few images that I did contribute to.
yeah
Like
the
on
the
the Genesis,
Genesis. Yeah.
yeah, on the Genesis, I did a few images. It's not a lot. It's a couple of character designs and maybe 3 to 5 illustrations at most. I think something like
Mm.
that. So yeah, for me, the Genesis as well was a big deal because that was one of the first things I saw from Massive Black, and well, it wasn't Massive Black; it was like just character design, right? Marco by then already made his own tutorials of character ideation, and he used to back then also just draw with pencils the character designs, and I thought it was so cool. And the Genesis already existed back then. It was like a tabletop role playing game, and it was a whole world basically of awesome concepts by Marco, and that was a big inspiration. Like early on, I was still in school, so when I started working there, and then the idea came up of him wanting to reboot it, basically, kind of make give it a facelift. Like obviously, I was so excited, but I I freaked myself out so much. Like I put so much pressure on me that I couldn't draw anything for a full year. I was just too afraid. I could not commit to, like, I thought it's not good enough, and so yeah, to this day, like I look at some of the images I did for the Genesis and all that with some discomfort because I always think, man, it should have been so much better. Like I just I couldn't deliver what I wanted, but yeah, it is what it is. At least I'm grateful that I even got to contribute.
Yeah, and speaking of your contribution and your projects, how does your design process usually go anytime you want to start working on a project? Like, what does a pipeline look like?
So it varies greatly, of course. It depends on the task, right? So since I don't really have a lot of like client work at all on my portfolio, I don't think it makes sense that I talk about how I tackle like much of the client work. But with the personal work, um, I think I have two methods I work with. So usually, like I have ideas rattling around in my head like long before I ever try to draw them. Uh, and it can be inspired by anything. Basically, it could be just a color. It could be the World War One era. It can be a cartoon I saw. It doesn't matter. As well, like I get a lot inspired by stuff like European architecture, just walking around in old towns, having like seeing like a small passageway or doorway that will spark like an image for me, like of a character in there, something I still want to eventually like execute, but I haven't gone to it. Like it's still a little too technically challenging for me. But so yeah, I have like I try to make lists of these ideas when I have like a spark or something. If I don't write it down, it's probably gonna go away. So I have a notebook. I write stuff down. I try to add like a few keywords that explains what it's about, why what sparked it and whatnot. And then then it's either a chaotic method or a very precise method. So chaotic is just me, sitting down and just putting in the hours, and where it takes me. Like a lot of the projects, like with the World War Zero thing, since it had no deadline, like I could put in as much time as I wanted. And at first, I started the very first drawings for it in 2016, I think, and the first post was 2018. So I was messing around on it for 2 years before I ever considered it done. And it doesn't mean I was working the whole time, but I would leave it, I would come back to it, I would leave it, I would mess around, change it, change the color. It doesn't matter, but I would just keep it in the background. So if I'm waiting for client feedback or something, I would just kind of jump back on working on something personal like that. And then the other process is something that I would say it's a bit more concise. And I started trying to figure out a way to work that's a bit more predictable, because this method is, I don't know, like when I start, if it's going to work at all. I don't know how long it's going to take me. And basically, I wanted to feel a bit more stable as well when and a client asks me to do something, that I can do it in a certain period of time, basically without messing around. So I got into a bad habit with that, like just allowing myself to chaotically take me where my intuition go where my intuition takes me, basically. So around also 2016, I think, is where I made a big effort to improve my pipeline. So uh, I came up with basically not a project, but that for a month I would try to draw a character a day. So during work days, right? So I would take a few hours in the morning, would wake up early, and I would need to have a character by the end of the day. And that forced me to come up with themes that are easy enough to tackle, and a method of execution that I know I can finish in that limited time. And I did that for a few months, and that's my other method that's much more precise. So then I would take it, basically a theme that's driving the whole thing, like design elements that I want to keep there. Stylistically, keep it fairly simple. I don't want to sit around with over rendering too much. I just want that lineup of characters, basically, because by themselves they're not that interesting. But when you have a lineup of like 5 or 10 characters, it kind of brings you into a concise world. So that's like my second method, and I prefer this because that's what I like doing. Like I like actually building, like not just one character. I like to kind of flesh out, uh, with those characters, try to bring you in to maybe that what could be a series, right? Like a TV show.
Yeah, awesome. And all right, the next question is kind of interesting because we're kind of taking a break from all the technical aspects of the job and everything, which is what area beside the area you're working on right now would you be interested to explore and learn in the future? And another way I could also rephrase this question is, um, if given the scenario that you didn't have to worry about money or resources or time or anything or any other factors and you could do anything, what would you do? Basically, another way, sorry, just to add another layer of abstraction to this question is, what would what which one of your dreams or aspirations would you try to manifest in that situation?
Okay, so that's a two-parter, right? Like one where I'm trying to branch out is that's taking basically baby steps towards that end goal. Would be just I'm trying to move a little bit towards illustration more, because character designs, that's still my main interest. But I want, basically, when I say illustration, it's not like very narrative driven or anything. I want to put my characters into worlds, and I want to do it like, because when you're working on a project, someone's going to do that for you. But if you're working on your own stuff, that kind of have to do it yourself. So I'm trying to move there, and it's just literally just trying to have some kind of background for the character. So moving slowly towards illustration, and I hope with those background elements to start like fleshing out a bit more of the worlds that I'm creating for my characters. And that would lead into what I would like to eventually do. Well, as I mentioned before, since such a big influence for me were, Dragon Ball, Naruto, Berserk, shows like that kind of draw you in, and into these worlds. That's eventually what I would like to come up with as well. So a project where it would eventually probably take shape as either comic book, graphic novel, maybe TV show. But as first off, it's just like building it, and if I had all the time in the world, I would also practice like writing a script. That would be a pretty big deal to make that happen. So yeah, that would be something. But this is at the moment I'm just dreaming about it. I'm writing like little small notes, like maybe like sometimes I come up with like a small dialogue between like two characters that I'm developing and stuff like that. But it's nothing. It's not like a consistent story yet. But yeah, I'm constantly like in the background. I'm dreaming about that stuff.
All right, that sounds awesome, and best of luck on that to you. And well, we've reached the final section of the podcast, and I'm sure you said it before the recording that you already listened to some of my podcasts, so you kind of can guess where this is going.
Yeah.
Which the section is called Final Words, and basically what it means is in this limited time, to anyone in the future who might be listening to this podcast, you could leave a message as another human to another human being. What would that be?
As a human to another human, tip one: don't forget to floss. And on a more serious note, since probably people watching this will be creatively inclined, right? Artists or creatives. I think my tip would be to keep in touch with that feeling that you had as a kid when you were really excited about something, right? Like a show or whatever. Like for me, like I don't know how many times I mentioned like Dragon Ball and Naruto, but it's because it still makes me happy. And I think it's very important for me to remember that feeling of how much like I care, and to kind of try while working to call that out, basically. Because if you don't, like, it's very easy to get gobbled up in like technical aspects of the work, and it really then just becomes a job, and then you can become pretty jaded, and you know it's very common, I think. So if there's any way you can keep in touch with that feeling of excitement for something, then I think it's good to regularly like touch base with it, like remind yourself, like, this is what got me into it. This is what I'm doing. That's what's cool about it.
All right, awesome. Well, actually, that was a good note to end this podcast on. Actually, you said something really interesting that I think everyone should also start to think about it later after they finish listening to this episode. Like, seriously. And thank you so much for coming by. Where can people contact you if they had any question? Is your Instagram okay if I leave it in the captions?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Yeah, all right, awesome. I'll do that. And thank you so much again for coming by. And thank you to
Thanks for having
anyone
me.
who tuned in and listened to this episode. I hope you all have a great day. And till next episode, take care and bye.